Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Andrew Ondari. I am the presenter of today's program. And the heading of our program, which is basically an introduction to human resource audit, is the foundations of human resource auditing. This is part of the human resource auditor program, and which is in 4 or 5 series, which we are going to look at starting today until Friday. I want us to move to the next slide in the interest of time and look at the scope of our topic. By scope, I mean the areas we are going to cover in this program, which we have just started until 4. The first item is the role of HR audits in organizational success. When we talk of organizational success, we are talking about the ability of an organization to achieve its strategic objectives, both in the short and the long term. And a successful organization is one that generates revenue, is one that competes successfully in the market, and is one that grows. So by conducting HR audit, we are going to look at how this contributes to this organizational success. I will be defining what HR audit is, because it is very important for us to understand what it is compared to the traditional financial audits. Secondly, we are going to look at the key concepts and terminologies that are used in HR auditing, because this will form a key part of understanding the HR audit and its processes. Lastly, we will look at the HR audit process, because it is a systematic and step-by-step way of conducting an audit. So this process will demonstrate how we are going to conduct the actual HR audit when we go back to our organizations and start implementing this process. So basically, those are the 3 key areas we are going to look at in this program today. By way of introduction, let me say that HR audit has become a very important strategic management tool, especially in the 21st century. We are talking of the 21st century because this is the modern way of going about it. And we are living in the current century, which is 21st. Why do we say that it has become a strategic management tool? It is used as a framework or as a method of achieving organizational strategies, or even formulating those strategies. How does it help to formulate a strategy? For example, we are talking about the various functions of human resource management, which we should be auditing. For example, recruitment and selection. When we audit recruitment and selection, we are likely to have the right people doing the right things in the right places and at the right time. Once we have this kind of people, they will be performing their tasks or jobs efficiently and effectively. And this helps organizations to achieve their objectives. So without a an efficient and effective recruitment and selection process, then an organization ends up with the wrong people doing the wrong things and leads to organizational failure as opposed to organizational success. So a strategic tool is one that helps an organization to achieve its strategic objectives. Secondly, we operate as organizations in a global market, which is also diversified. By diversity, we mean differences in our backgrounds, for example, gender, religion, ethnic and educational backgrounds. So organizations have all these different people from different backgrounds. And in HR audit, we are going to look at how effective are our policies, practices, and even procedures in ensuring that we embrace and celebrate diversity. People from different backgrounds have different contributions, and that is why as organizations which promote the policy of equal opportunity employment as well as inclusivity, we embrace and celebrate our differences. This diversity promotes innovation and also performance. So from a HR perspective, when we audit our functions and our processes, we will look at the aspect of diversity and how well represented are people from different backgrounds. On globalization, we are saying that our organizations have become interconnected through communication, transport, and technology. That many of the things that we do locally can also be borrowed from the global market. For example, the best practices in training and development or performance management are not limited to the Kenyan environment. We can borrow best practices from elsewhere because we are part of this global market. And by embracing these policies of diversity and inclusivity, we ensure that our practices and policies are culturally sensitive and effective across diverse teams. Cultural sensitivity has to do with ability to adapt and include people from different backgrounds. And all of us, I believe, come from different backgrounds, and that whatever we do should not offend the culture of the community within which we operate. For example, if you operate in a purely Muslim community or Islamic community, you should be culturally sensitive. Because Islam is not just a religion, but it's a way of doing things, so that whatever you do does not offend their way of life. And when we talk of effectiveness, this has to do with realization of desired results. So what results are we looking at as HR managers? One, customer satisfaction. Two is revenue generation. Three, profit making, especially for private organizations. And four, organizational growth. That through HR audit, we are going to identify strengths and weaknesses, as well as gaps, which we should improve so that we can achieve those results, which we have referred to as effectiveness. The other aspect related to HR audit is that it enables us to navigate the complex environment in which we operate. And some of the aspects that we should be addressing when we conduct effective HR audits is ensuring compliance. Compliance has to do with adherence to the labor laws that we should adhere to. I will be mentioning compliance in the afternoon. We also need to comply with our own internal policies and also comply with industry standards. So when we conduct HR audits, we want to ensure that our policies, processes, and practices are compliant. We all know the consequences of not complying, especially with the labor laws. There will be so many lawsuits, and which are very expensive. So we want to avoid that by ensuring that the HR function operates in compliance with the labor laws. By conducting HR audits, we also ensure operational efficiency. Operational efficiency has to do with the optimization of our resources, namely human resource, financial resource, and physical resources. These are the resources we use on a daily basis, and we cannot afford to waste them. For example, human resources can be wasted. How do we waste human resources? I can mention 2 ways. One, assigning them the wrong duties for which they do not qualify. All of us are trained HR managers, and if we are taken, for example, to a different department like finance, we may not function there effectively. So we shall have wasted our skills and knowledge by posting people to positions that they do not qualify. Secondly, we can waste human resources by either overworking or underworking them. Overworking means that they are overwhelmed by so many tasks and therefore they are not efficient. And underutilization means that you are giving them so little that they finish their work even before the day ends. That is wastage. So we should be auditing our HR function to ensure that people are engaged throughout the day. So we shall be looking at one of the metrics of measuring employee engagement. And then it also helps us to ensure sustainable growth. Sustainable growth is continuous growth over time. And this results from an organization which has the right number and the quality of people doing the right things in the right way and at the right time. So without quality employees, then an organization may not sustain its growth. We are also looking at sustainable growth in terms of retention of those quality staff. That if we allow our employees to leave, then our growth may not be sustainable. Why? Because those employees who are productive go with all their skills, their knowledge, and experience. And this causes instability within an organization. So when we conduct an HR audit, we are going to look at employee turnover as an indicator that an organization is not doing very well. Why do people leave? It could be because of unfair practices, policies, and processes, which we are going to audit. And lastly, HR audit is critical for continuous improvement and risk mitigation. That at no point should we stop growing or expanding in terms of our business or even in terms of skills and knowledge. Because continuous improvement requires that we develop new products on a continuous basis, we develop our skills and knowledge, and we also grow. Risk mitigation has to do with the reduction or avoidance of the various risks that arise from poor management of our human resources. There are many risks associated with HR, for example, employee exit, where people are living with all the skills. And why is it a risk? It's because the organization is likely to have a negative reputation. And secondly, it is not going to achieve its objectives if there is a high turnover. So basically, that is what we are going to look at in this program of human resource audit. With your permission, I can now move to the concept of HR audit. What is it? I've defined it as a systematic process of reviewing and evaluating human resource policies, practices, procedures, and systems. Going by the highlighted words, I will start with policies. We are all guided by policies in the decisions that we make to ensure efficient and effective utilization of our employees. These are broad guidelines. These guidelines help us to conduct the business of human resources. Almost all our decisions and actions are guided by policy related to all the functions of a human resource manager. For example, recruitment, we have a policy there. Training, there is a policy. Performance management, there are policies. Discipline, there is a policy. Health and safety, among others. These are all guided by policies. And we need to review these policies to ensure that, one, they are still relevant because our environment is in a continuous state of change. And two, that they are up to date. We do not want to have policies that are outdated, which means that they could not be in compliance with the labor laws or industry standards. And that is why we have a keen interest in evaluating those HR policies. On practices, these are the day-to-day behaviors or routines that we engage in to perform our functions as HR managers. They could relate to any of the functions that I've mentioned, like recruitment and selection. So what could be a practice in recruitment and selection? One of the practices could be job analysis in recruitment and selection. We need to be clear on the jobs that employees are coming to do. So when we conduct a job analysis, we collect information about the jobs that are vacant and then use this information to develop job descriptions and person specifications. These two documents are used to advertise positions when they fall vacant. So job analysis is one of the practices that we can engage in during recruitment and selection. So the question we should ask ourselves is, are these practices fair? Are they producing the results that we desire? Or are they enabling us to achieve our objective of getting the right people to do the right things? There could be other practices in training and development. For example, training needs analysis. It is a common practice to ensure that we identify gaps which can be bridged through a training intervention. So these practices are key because they enable us to produce the results that we want. For procedures, these are steps and methods that are used to conduct an activity. For example, performance management. If we want to, for example, do a performance appraisal, there are procedures to be followed. Perhaps we need to meet with our employees and set our targets and timelines. Then after that, we allow the employees to start working, and later we evaluate them. That could be a simple procedure in performance appraisal. For systems, this could be technological or manual ways of doing things. And I want to use the example of a technological system like human resource information system, which enables us to store, share, and disseminate information related to human resources. When we evaluate or review this system, we want to ensure that one, it is up to date, that there is no information in this system that is stale. Two, that the data in this system is accurate. Because when we have inaccurate information in a system, then we run the risk of losing that data or making wrong decisions. So that is very important to a human resource manager, that all the systems that we have, like performance management system, reward system, compensation system, or even training system, they should be adequate, they should be relevant, and that they should be accurate. Another way of looking at HR audit is identifying areas of improvement and ensuring compliance. When we conduct a HR audit, we are likely to identify 2 or 3 things. 1, strengths. 2, weaknesses. And 3, gaps. Talking of weaknesses and gaps, this could be areas of improvement. For example, we may have employees, but their weakness is that they do not have relevant skills to function effectively. Or it could be a gap. For example, there is no training needs analysis. That becomes a gap. And those weaknesses and gaps should be areas of improvement. Therefore, HR audit will help us to identify those areas which may need improvement. And we shall be talking about what improvements can be made by way of recommendation in our HR audit reports. Secondly, it helps us to ensure compliance with the labor laws. The function of HR is a highly regulated function. There are quite a number of labor laws that regulate our performance as HR managers, and I will mention some of these labor laws. One is the Employment Act. There are quite a number of provisions in this act related to recruitment, discipline, as well as work environment. Secondly, we have Work Injuries and Benefits Act, that when employees are injured, what are the guidelines? We also have OSHA, that is Occupational Safety and Health Act. This relates to health and safety conditions and the minimum standards that we should always maintain in our organizations. The other labor laws include the Labor Relations Act. How do we relate with our employees at the organizational level? And there are quite a number of other labor laws which we should all comply with. And then lastly, by conducting an HR audit, we ensure that the HR function is aligned with the corporate objectives. This alignment is very important because it helps HR managers to achieve organizational goals, objectives, and strategies. Usually strategies are formulated at the top, and then they are cascaded downwards to departmental levels. For example, if the strategy of an organization is to reduce operational costs by 20%, so we should find out whether the HR department is able to achieve the 20% cost reduction within the given time. So what do? We conduct an audit to ensure that we have the right number and quality of people. The right number is one that is not too high or too low to achieve that objective. If the number is high, it means that an organization has excess staff. And when you have excess staff, it means that the cost of HR is going to be higher. And that cannot be in line with the cost reduction strategy. So we can only cost reduction strategies when we audit all our functions, starting with training and development. Usually in a cost-cutting strategy, training is the first one to be affected. Many organizations freeze training as a way of cutting cost. Recruitment, the same. We freeze recruitment as a way of cutting cost so that we don't have new employees joining. So what happens to those who leave, especially when we are trying to cut cost? We are likely to do job sharing or enlargement so that we don't have to hire new people. The other aspect related to HR audit is who can conduct this audit. And as I have indicated, this audit can be conducted internally by HR staff or externally by independent consultants. I believe that at the end of this program, we are going to get insights on how to conduct an HR audit internally. And we will be able to share this knowledge with our employees and be able to conduct this audit. And if you have done this audit before, probably you are likely to get new insights on how to conduct it, or even align it with the internal audit department. Because in some cases, organizations have their own internal audit department which conducts audits throughout the organization. So we are going to see how HR auditors are going to work with the internal auditors to ensure that this process is conducted in an efficient and effective manner. External consultants can also be brought on board for two reasons. One, because of their experience in the industry to conduct this, and two, because of their expertise and independence. So this is likely to ensure that there is objectivity when conducting this internal audit. So those are the key aspects related to the concept of HR audit. So we have said it's a systematic process of reviewing or evaluating policies, practices, and procedures. It helps us to identify areas of improvement and compliance, and it can be done internally or externally, depending on the need of the organization. So that is the concept of HR audit. With your permission, I can move to the next one, where I've said that HR audit is basically a health check. At the individual level, a person is said to be healthy when he or she is physically, emotionally, mentally, and psychologically stable. At the organizational level, we are saying that an organization is healthy because it is able to achieve its objectives without struggling. It is resilient and it is able to adapt to changes in its environment. So talking of HR audit as a health check, we are looking at how effective are our policies, processes, and systems to achieve departmental and organizational objectives. And therefore, HR audit is a health check because it helps us to diagnose HR systems, strengths and weaknesses. A HR department is said to have strengths because it has the right number and the quality of people. And we can only establish this by conducting a HR audit. Two, the strength can relate to ability of people to perform their work effectively and produce the desired results. So what are we going to audit in order to ensure that people are producing results? It is by ensuring that the performance management system is efficient and effective, or by doing or conducting performance appraisals to identify the employee performance levels. Secondly, it helps us to identify policy and compliance gaps. A policy gap is where the policy is silent on certain issues which the organization is facing. For example, an employee becomes bipolar in the course of their employment. So if such a case arises, you may need to go back to your policy and find out what does the policy say when the employee becomes bipolar. And I'm not saying that bipolar is a problem. It is basically a condition where people can become hyperactive or go quiet, and you may not have effective guidelines to ensure that these people are accommodated by others. So if there is a gap, for example, on aspects like neurodiversity, where bipolar is one of them, then HR audits are likely to identify these gaps, and going forward, you develop a policy to cater for people with different conditions. Compliance gaps have to do with the challenges or non-existence of certain practices or systems to ensure that an organization complies. Basically, our environment, our legal environment is in a continuous state of change. And unless we conduct HR audits, we may be facing many compliance gaps, which can be very expensive. I will be talking about compliance later in the afternoon, so I may not want to delve into the details of compliance. Another health check is to detect employee relations in our organizations. Ideally, good employee relations is one where employees are working as a team cooperatively without conflicts or without disputes. And this can only work if our organizations embrace democratic principles such as participation, involvement, and consultation. What will be an indicator of poor employee relations? One, frequent conflicts. Two, many industrial actions like strikes or lockouts. Or three, absenteeism. So through HR audit, we are going to assess the health of our relationships in our organizations and take remedial measures so that there is a good working relationship between the managers and the employees. Another health check is the accuracy of our records. That inaccurate records are those that have errors, which may lead to poor decision making, or they are not based on facts. In an environment where our decisions are data driven, we cannot afford to have inaccurate records. So all the records that are under our care, particularly employee records or employment records, they should be accurate. So how do we ensure that they are accurate? It's by conducting HR audits to identify any inconsistencies that may exist in our records. Another health check is the effectiveness of our recruitment and retention processes and strategies. That our recruitment and selection process is said to be effective when it enables an organization to select the right person suitable for the job. There are many instances where organizations end up with people who do not do the jobs for which they were hired. So how does an organization end there? It is because of those ineffective processes and procedures which should be the subject of a HR audit. For retention is about keeping our employees for a long time, and not just any employee, but those who are productive and have the right mix of skills and knowledge. These are the ones that we need to retain. High levels of employee turnover is an indication of poor policies, practices, or even systems. And those are the subjects of HR audits. Our HR audit also helps us to evaluate performance management systems. That performance is one of the key functions of a HR manager. That as HR managers, we justify our existence by ensuring that employees perform to expectations. And that is why we have the performance cycles for public organizations. The performance cycle starts this month, July, and ends in June next year. So HR audits will evaluate the effectiveness of these performance management systems. Because at the end of this process, we should ensure that all employees are meeting their targets and KPIs. Failure to achieve this means that the organization is not able to achieve its objectives. So we should ensure that our performance systems are producing the results that we intend. The other health check is alignment with the industry standards, where we are saying that our practices, our policies also are comparable with what is happening in our industry. For example, if you are a hospital, your practices and policies should be aligned with the industry standards. And again, depending on the size of your health facility. Cleanliness is one of the key standards in industry. You cannot afford to have a hospital which is not clean, because we don't want to visit a hospital which is very dirty, and yet we have gone there for treatment. We can get more infections than even when we went there. It also monitors training and development effectiveness. As I will mention, under the functional audit, that at the end of a training program, we should evaluate its effectiveness. And the effectiveness of our training is measured in terms of its ability to bridge the performance gaps. So what are the performance gaps that a training intervention should bridge? One is attainment of KPIs. Two, attainment of targets. And three, relevance of the training to the employee performance. So we should be able to evaluate the effectiveness of a training by looking at the results that are produced by the employees at the end of a training program. And the second last, HR audit helps to uncover organizational issues that could negatively impact an organization. And lastly, a health audit provides recommendations on the overall performance of the organization, of the HR department, as well as areas of improvement, which I've already indicated. So that is what a HR audit intends to do by diagnosing issues related to policies, practices, processes, and systems, so that our HR department functions seamlessly. What are the objectives of a HR audit? There are quite a number of them. I will restrict myself to the ones that I have highlighted. Number one is compliance check, that our policies, our processes, and our systems should comply with the labor laws, industry regulations, as well as company policies. Allow me to address myself to compliance with the labor laws, which is one of the key aspects of a human resource manager for purposes of understanding. As I have indicated, there are many labor laws that regulate the employment relationship. For example, the Employment Act. Our policy should be in compliance with the Employment Act. And there are various provisions in the Employment Act related to our policies. And one of the regulations is non-discrimination, that an employee should not be discriminated against on account of their ethnic background, religion, education, or even their physical conditions. And therefore, our policy on recruitment and selection should be drafted in a way that ensures equal opportunity employment. Equal opportunity employment ensures that there is no discrimination on account of our differences. There are other labor laws like Occupational Safety and Health Act, which ensures that our work environment is safe and is healthy, safe from injuries, and is healthy from illnesses. And there are various provisions under OSHA which ensure that our work environment is clean and safe. For example, warning signs, especially in all organizations, warning signs should be placed where there are slippery floors or falling objects or work in progress, because failure to ensure that there are adequate signages may lead to injuries, and organizations are accountable for such injuries. On health issues under OSHA, that our offices should be well ventilated with and also natural lighting, so that there is no transmission of communicable ailments. So again, our policies on health and safety should be in compliance with the Occupational Safety and Health Act. So it is important for us to audit our own HR policies and ensure that they are in compliance with the labor laws and industry regulations. Secondly, an HR audit helps us to ensure efficient evaluation. Efficiency, as I have indicated, relates to the utilization of resources. And there are three resources I mentioned: one, financial resources; two, physical resources; and three, human resources. So an efficient system is one that ensures that there is resource optimization. In recruitment, we ensure that our resources are used optimally, because there are cost implications related to recruitment. We spend money on recruitment, for example, advertising and interviewing those potential candidates. So how do we ensure that our recruitment and selection process is efficient? One is by adopting technologies. A technology like ATS helps us to track our recruitment and selection process, shortlisting, interviewing, and selection. So when we automate recruitment and selection, we can optimize cost, that instead of using human beings to conduct shortlisting, we automate that process, which helps us to cut on cost and time. Training is also another area where we can optimize our resources. For example, instead of having trainers, we can automate the training program by having a learning management system where employees can log into the system and acquire skills and knowledge related to their various jobs. The same goes to performance management, where we are ensuring that performance management should not take a long time and a lot of money to implement. So The objective of HR audit is to ensure all the HR functions are cost effective. Thirdly, the objective of HR audit is to mitigate or avoid risks. There are various types of risks which we shall talk about later. There are legal risks, operational, and strategic. Legal risks are those associated with compliance, where an organization fails to comply with the labor laws. So failure to comply might lead to lawsuits, where our organizations are taken to court for failure to comply with certain legal requirements. This is expensive because it takes a lot of time to attend court cases and also money to pay the lawyers. So if our processes and procedures are effective, we should be able to avoid these legal risks. Operational risks have to do with the day-to-day performance of our employees. For example, we use computers every day. And one of the operational risks related to computers could be attack by external threats, such as viruses or hacking into our system. So it can cripple our day-to-day operations. So what should we do? We ensure that our systems are secure from external threats or even internal threats, because employees can sabotage our operations, then that becomes a risk. So we look at how the operational risks are going to affect our efficiency and effectiveness as HR managers. Because if a computer system or a human resource information system is affected, then that is downtime. And the downtime can be costly, especially when we are dealing with key or important clients or customers. Strategic risks relate to formulation and implementation of strategies that may not work or deliver the intended results. We engage in strategic management all the time, and we make choices. The choices that we make might pose risks. For example, we have decided to reduce our operational costs by, say, 10%. And then one of the strategies that we adopt is retrenchment. At the end of this process, we end up retrenching people who are highly qualified, and we are left with the people who are not. This becomes a strategic risk because we cannot achieve our strategic objectives if we don't have qualified employees. Or if we allow those qualified employees to take early retirement and allow them to go. This becomes a risk because we are losing those high value employees. So strategic risks abound in human resource management because sometimes the choices that we make may work to our disadvantage. The other objective of HR audit is to benchmark. And benchmarking is a comparison between one organization and the other. And what are we comparing? The key aspects that I mentioned earlier. 1, policies. 2, practices. And 3, systems. So by comparing we are looking at the best practices that we can borrow so that we can also improve our performance. Talking of best practices in HR, we are looking at practices in recruitment, in training, in compensation, as well as performance management. Allow me to pick an example of compensation and reward management. When we benchmark with others, we are likely to identify best practices in relation to compensation and reward management. One of the practices is conducting salary surveys, that before we determine who gets what, we should conduct salary surveys internally and externally. Internally, because we want to make the compensation system equitable. And we also compare ourselves externally because we want to make our compensation externally competitive. So this practice of conducting salary surveys helps us to compare ourselves with others in the same industry so that we can determine whether, one, we are going to pay above industry rates, two, average industry rates, or three, below industry rates. Why do I say below industry rates? It is possible that an organization can pay below, especially when it comes to salaries, but in terms of benefits, they are above market rates. That makes it competitive. And those who are above market rates may reduce on their benefits because it's likely to be very expensive. The benefits are high and the salaries are very high. So when we conduct a HR audit, we are likely to conduct a benchmark by comparing our practices with others in the industry so that we ensure equity and competitiveness. The other objective is to ensure strategic alignment where our HR policies, processes, and strategies support the overall attainment of organizational goals. I've mentioned an example of cost cutting. We can also use an example of growth, that in terms of revenue, we want to grow by 20%. So how do HR managers ensure that the organization attains the 20% growth? One is by auditing the performance of employees so that the targets that are set are aligned with the 20% growth. Two, we also ensure we audit recruitment and selection so that we ensure we have the right number and the quality of staff who will support that growth. Or if it is in terms of skills and knowledge, we audit training to ensure that the people we have the skills and the knowledge to achieve that 20% revenue growth. So doing a HR audit ensures that we are aligned with our corporate strategies. Lastly, it is improvement recommendations that at the end of our HR audit, we are going to make recommendations to address the two areas that we mentioned. One, weaknesses, and two, gaps. So if there are weaknesses or gaps, we make recommendations so that we improve our policies, our processes, as well as our systems. So those are the key objectives of conducting a HR audit. I want to invite us to ask any questions or make any comments related to the concept of HR audit and its objectives. So anybody with a question or a comment, kindly go ahead. And Sangira, if you are there, you can ask your question or make your comment. Doreen B, if you are there. Esther. Okay, apparently there is no question or comment. I want us to move to the next part, and that is types of HR audit. There are quite a number of audits that we conduct. We can do them separately or in combination. The first type of audit is compliance audit. This kind of audit evaluates, analyzes, or reviews the level of compliance with the labor laws in relation to our policies, practices, and procedures. We can design a tool to gather information related to compliance with the labor laws. We can develop a tool related to health and safety or compensation to ensure that people are paid according to the requirements of the law, particularly the Employment Act related to minimum pay. Or develop a tool related to compensation as well as employee relations. An aspect of employee relations is discipline. So is our disciplinary procedure and policy in compliance or complies with the labor law, which is Employment Act? So we can do a compliance audit by developing a tool like a questionnaire or an interview checklist, or conduct an audit by way of observation. Do we comply with those labor laws? Secondly, which I will discuss in detail, is the functional audit. These are the activities conducted by human resource managers. And we shall be looking at 7 or 8 functions of a HR manager. There could be more, starting with recruitment and selection. 2, training and development. 3, performance management and appraisal. 4, compensation and reward management. 5, health and safety. 6, employee relations. And 7, records management. So what are we going to audit in these functions? The efficiency and effectiveness of those functions. Efficiency is the cost aspect, which I've mentioned. Effectiveness is the results produced in those functions. Whether it's recruitment, do we get the right people? Whether it's training, do people acquire the right skills and knowledge? Whether it's performance management, whether people are performing to the expected levels. Or if it is health and safety, have we reduced the cases of accidents or illnesses? So that is the functional audit we are going to look at. Thirdly is the strategic audit, where we are looking at the level of alignment between HR strategies and organizational goals. So to what extent do HR strategies align with business goals? And I've given a few examples like cost reduction or revenue generation. Are the HR strategies helping the organization to achieve those objectives? The other audit is best practice, where we are doing benchmarking with other organizations in the industry. By comparing ourselves with others, we identify best practices which we can borrow and implement in our organizations. They are best practices because, one, they have been tested and they are working. Two, they are scientifically proven and they are functional. And three, they produce the intended or desired results. So best practices are those that are scientifically proven to function, they produce the results, and that they are proved to be working. So when we do a benchmark with others, we are likely to identify those best practices. So once we have identified those practices, we customize them. By customizing them, we mean that we tailor-make them to suit our conditions or our requirements. Because the mistakes that some organizations do is to borrow best practices and implement them without customizing them. Not all organizations are the same, and we operate in different environments. So a best practice like automating our recruitment and selection process may not work for us because we may not have the technology. So we need to customize that best practice and ensure that it works for us. We can also conduct employee satisfaction audit. Satisfaction is the level to which employees are contented with, one, their jobs, two, their payment, and three, their organization in general. So employees can be happy about their jobs. So what can make employees happy about their jobs? One, the challenges they face in the job. Is the job challenging enough? Two, is the job interesting? And three, is the job rewarding? So satisfaction has to do with those aspects like rewarding, challenging tasks, and interesting. So that if the employees are not happy with their jobs, the HR audit will show this and make recommendations on how to enhance the level of satisfaction. So what can managers do if the employees are not satisfied with their jobs? One basic recommendation could be job redesigning. So when you redesign a job, you are thinking about three things: job rotation, job enlargement, and job enrichment. Those are concepts that most of us may be familiar with. And these are the ones that can make an employee happy or satisfied with their job. They can also be satisfied or dissatisfied with their payment. Usually, all of us, we compare what we get with others, either in the same organization or in the industry. If the payment is internally equitable and externally competitive, then employees are likely to be happy. They're likely to be satisfied. So HR audit will tell us whether employees are happy with their jobs or with their compensation and rewards. And if they are not happy, measures can be taken. They can also be satisfied with their organizations, particularly in relation to the working environment and organizational culture. Work environment relates to two things. One, the social environment, and two, the physical environment. So people can be satisfied with these two environments or dissatisfied. For example, the physical environment has to do with the health and safety of the employees. If their health and safety is not guaranteed, they will not be happy or satisfied. On the social environment, we are talking about relations with others. If the relationship among employees or with their managers is toxic, then there will be high levels of dissatisfaction. And when employees are dissatisfied, they are likely to leave the organization at any time. And that is what HR audits should identify and address so as to reduce employee turnover. The last type of audit is cultural audit, where we are looking at the three key aspects associated with the culture. One, the values. Two, the norms. And three, belief system. I will address the first two elements of culture, starting with values. Values relate to aspects that organizations consider to be important for their success. What are the examples of these values which originate from the mission and core values of an organization? One is integrity and honesty. That in our HR audit, we should measure or determine the level of integrity and honesty in our organizations. So we develop a tool that will enable us to obtain such kind of information, like corruption. Are there cases of corruption in our organizations? That touches on honesty and integrity. Harassment. Are there cases of harassment? That touches on integrity. So one of the values, which is a cultural aspect, is honesty and integrity. Two is innovation. An organization that values innovation is one that invests in training and also rewards innovation. So when we do a cultural audit, we are looking at the values like innovativeness. The other value is professionalism. How do we handle fellow employees as well as our customers? Do we address their issues on time? Do we treat them as humans? Do we also respect them? That touches on professionalism. So a cultural audit will address those core values, such as honesty and integrity, innovation, as well as professionalism. The other aspect of culture, which I mentioned, is norms. These are practices, the behaviors and the routines that we engage in on a daily basis. And as I indicated from the beginning, I defined HR audit as a systematic process of evaluating or reviewing HR policies, practices. The key word there is practice, and systems. So practices are a part of culture, the way we do things. So in HR manager, what are the ways in which we conduct recruitment? We train people. We conduct performance appraisals or disciplinary process. That becomes a norm or a practice, which is a cultural aspect. So in HR audit, we are going to look at those two key aspects, that is the values and practices, which affect employee performance as well as their behavior. There are other types of audits, which we will talk about later. Next is the next slide here. Just a second. Is the role of HR managers in auditing the HR function. But before I go there, I think my computer froze. This is the one that I wanted to address. Key areas covered in HR audit. I have mentioned a number of them. One is recruitment and selection, which talks about the hiring process from the time we identify vacant positions to the time an employee on the job and assess their performance, which we call probation. Secondly is compensation and benefits. We will be looking at the pay structure, whether it's a graded pay structure or a family structures, incentives, and the legal compliance. Thirdly, we will look at performance appraisal. We look at the process, the systems that are involved, and the feedback mechanisms. The other area covered is training and development. How do we go about training and developing people in our organization? From the time we identify training needs, and then develop training programs, and create training materials, implementation of the training, and lastly, evaluation of the training process. Because all these aspects affect skill and knowledge acquisition. So it will be a waste of time if we don't conduct training and development in an efficient and effective way. Workplace safety, we are looking at two key labor laws, OSHA and WIBA, which we must comply with. Employee relations is about grievance and disciplinary procedures. Grievances are complaints. How do we handle them? Discipline, what is the disciplinary process? As I will discuss, these are very important aspects which can promote or hinder effective employee relations. And lastly is records management. How accurate is our record and the element of confidentiality. Speaking of confidentiality in relation to the Data Protection Act, we must comply. We comply with the Data Protection Act that nobody should be allowed to access personal data which is in our custody. So how do we manage this? There are quite a lot of confidential information related to, one, health and safety of employees, two, payment, three, marital status, four, number of children. These are protected under the Data Protection Act, and we should keep these records confidential. Accuracy can be ensured by updating these records on a regular basis. Because there are cost implications on inaccurate data that we keep. The last aspect there is legal compliance. I've already mentioned that, so I do not want to belabor the point. What is the role of HR managers in the audit process? One is ensure compliance, and that is why we are conducting this audit. You can only establish compliance if you have conducted an audit of all the policies, processes, and systems. So at the end of this process, the HR manager should be able to verify the level of adherence to the labor laws, policies, and industry standards. The main purpose of legal compliance is to minimize legal risks. I'll be mentioning the legal risks in a little while. Secondly is improving HR efficiency. That as HR manager, we have a responsibility of ensuring optimum utilization of employees. How do we ensure this? One, hiring the right people with the right skills and knowledge. Two, deploying them or allocating them the right jobs. And three, ensuring that they have adequate tasks to perform in order to be engaged the whole day, so that we don't have people who do not have something to do during the day. That means that they are underutilized, and that's not an efficient way of managing people. Underutilization. That means that we are not able to achieve the full potential of our employees. The other role is to align HR strategies with the corporate strategy. As I have indicated, HR strategies related to recruitment, training, performance management, as well as compensation should be aligned with the strategy. For example, compensation. If the strategy of the organization is to reduce operational costs by 10%, then in relation to compensation, we should ensure that our HR staffing costs are aligned with the cost reduction. So how do we go about this? We look at our staffing levels, looking at the in-post. How many people do we have at the moment? What is their level of engagement? What are their contracts like? So that if we want to cut cost on compensation, we look at areas where we can cut cost. For example, those who are casuals, depending on the need, they may be removed from the payroll as a way of cutting cost. Or those whose contracts come to an end, especially those who are on term contracts or fixed term, you do not renew their contracts as a strategy in alignment with the corporate strategy of cost cutting. So as HR managers, we must ensure that our policies, practices, and systems are in congruence with the corporate strategy. And that it helps to achieve the mission and the vision of the organization. Mission is the purpose of existence, why an organization exists or what business it is engaged in. The vision is the future position. Where does the organization want to be in the next 5 or 10 years? Allow me to talk about the vision. This is aspirational, the aspiration of the organization to be what they want. So if the vision of the organization is to be a market leader in the production of health services in East and Central Africa, then HR managers should help to support this vision of being a market leader in health services. So how do they ensure that the organization achieves this vision? One, hiring the right people with the right skills and knowledge. Two, ensuring continuous training and development of staff. And three, ensuring that the employees are performing to the expected levels to achieve that vision of being a market leader. So how do we then ensure that we are aligned? It is by conducting HR audits on a regular basis. So what is the regularity of HR audits? One, quarterly. Two, biannually. Or three, annually. So again, depending on the policy you will put in place, HR audits can be done quarterly, half yearly, or annually, so that we achieve our vision. HR audits help to identify those gaps and weaknesses so that we are in line with our vision. The other role is enhanced talent management. Talent management has to do with three things. One, attract. Two, utilize. And three, retain. Attracting is what I've called recruitment, where we are hiring people who have the right mix of skills, knowledge, experience, and abilities. And then when it comes to utilization, is about two things. One, deployment. Do we assign them the right duties in our organizations? Or two, how do we use their skills and knowledge for innovation or product development? And then number three is retention, keeping those high value staff for a long time, either until they resign or retire or die, God forbid. So retaining those high value staff ensures three things. One, organizational stability. Two, continuous flow of staff in the talent pipeline, that at no time will an organization miss the right number of people. And 3, succession planning, that if we retain our employees, we ensure that we have people who are ready and have potential to take over from those who leave the organization. And the other aspect is HR managers help to strengthen organizational culture. We said that organizational culture has to do with 3 things. 1, values. 2, norms. And 3, beliefs. The highlighted words relate to the values of an organization, one of which is fairness, that we should demonstrate and practice fairness in all the functions of HR, whether it is recruitment, fairness, training, fairness, performance ratings, fairness, compensation, fairness. So everything that we do as HR managers should be fair. Inclusivity has to do with allowing employees to participate in decision making. Nobody should be left out. So inclusivity or inclusion is one of the cultural aspects which is valued in many organizations. And lastly is employee engagement. And engagement relates to 3 things. 1, performance of their duties to the expected standards. 2, identity with the organization. And 3, satisfaction with their jobs, their salaries, and their organization. So an engaged employee is one who has enough work to do throughout the day, is one who is committed to their jobs, and is one who is willing to remain in the organization for a long time. So as HR managers, through HR audits, we are able to identify gaps in our policies, in our practices, and in our systems, and ensure that we promote fairness, inclusion, and employee engagement. Other roles of HR managers is risk management. I will be talking about risk in the afternoon. 2 is that our decisions are data-driven. So data-driven decisions are those that are based on information or data. When we talk of recruitment, we make decisions based on data. Training must be based on data. Performance management, data. Promotion, data. For example, in recruitment and selection, which data do we need? 1 is the number of, that is data. 2, information about the potential candidates or applicants. That's data. So that when we make a decision to select, we select based on the data that we have about the employees, their experiences, their skills, and their capabilities. Speaking of training and development, we make data-based decisions. So we get data on employees before we train by conducting training needs analysis. The same goes with promotion. Who are we to promote? It's employees with the right skills, knowledge, experience and abilities. That is data. So HR audits help us to make informed decisions which are based on data. The other one is that HR managers promote continuous improvement. That HR audits help us to identify strengths, weaknesses, as well as gaps. Those weaknesses and gaps are areas of improvement. And if we conduct these HR audits regularly, we shall continuously refine our HR practices and systems. So as one of our key roles in HR audit is to ensure that we continuously improve HR systems and practices, whether it is in recruitment, improvement, whether it is training, we improve, whether it is in performance management, we improve. And then the other one is to build stakeholder confidence, that as we conduct HR audits, there are various people who have an interest in this process. Who are these? Our own employees in our departments. 2, employees in other departments. 3, senior managers. These are the stakeholders. So what do we do to ensure that this process acquires the confidence that it requires? One is stakeholder involvement, that we bring on board all the people who have an interest in this process. We should conduct meetings, conduct workshops to create awareness, and also get their input so that there is ownership. Otherwise, if the stakeholders do not identify with the HR audit, then there is a likelihood of resistance. And when people resist, it implies that the HR audit collapses. So we want to make it a success, and HR managers have a responsibility of building stakeholder confidence. Lastly is to boost business performance. As we have indicated before, that whatever we do in HR should be aligned with the organizational goals, objectives, and strategies. So the question we are asking ourselves at the back of our mind as we conduct this HR audit is the contribution of HR policies, practices, and systems to the success of our organization. And those of us who did not get the definition of organizational success is that the organization is able to achieve its goals, its objectives, and strategies. So what are the indicators of success? 1, revenue generation. 2, increased market share. 3, increased profits. And lastly, organizational growth. So we should ask ourselves, how are we contributing to this success? Like revenue generation, profit, customer satisfaction, market share, and organizational growth. So those are the roles of HR managers in this process of HR audit. So I believe that as we start this process, we are going to play our roles effectively so that we make this process a success. So again, I will stop there briefly and invite any one of us to ask any questions or make any comments related to the key areas covered and the role of HR managers in this audit. Any question? or comment? Okay, if there is no question or comment, yes, question, go ahead.
Not question, but just commenting about the presentation.
Esther, you are not audible. Kindly come again.
I'm saying,
Yes.
I don't have a question.
Yes.
But recommending the presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Esther.
Yes.
Asante sana. Mwakisha, if you have a question or comment to make, please go ahead. Okay. We move on. What is the strategic magic of HR audit? I've indicated some of them here, and it doesn't break a bone for us to repeat. Or one is that the audit helps to align HR practices, policies, and processes with business goals. Alignment means that they fit into those goals, and then they are relevant and they help to achieve those goals. Secondly, HR audit helps to identify talent gaps. By talent gaps, we refer to 2 or 3 things. One, the numbers of people that we need. If there is a shortage, HR audits should be able to identify this. 2, the quality of our employees. And who are quality employees? They have these 4 key aspects. 1, skills. 2, knowledge. 3, experience. 4, abilities. And 5, innovation. So through our HR audit, we are able to identify the quality of employees that we have. So if we don't have the right quality, then there is a talent gap. And then 3, employees with potential for growth or promotion. If we don't have adequate people or numbers of employees to promote, then that again becomes a talent gap. So talent gaps can be looked at in 3 ways. 1, the numbers. 2, the qualities. And 3, the potential of those who should be promoted. Then 3, it enhances organizational agility. Agility is about ability of an organization to adapt and grow with changes in the environment. Meaning that our HR policies, processes, and systems should be agile. Agile in the sense that they are able to adapt to changes in the environment. For example, our policies should be agile or adapt to changes in our labor laws. The recent changes that have taken place include SHA, that we should be able to include those regulatory deductions related to SHA. Those are mandatory. The same with housing levy. So our policies should adapt to such changes in the labor laws. Without this agility, then we become rigid. And anything that is rigid is easy to break. So we want to ensure through HR audits that our policies, processes, and procedures are adaptable to changes in our environment. The other magic that HR audits perform is strengthening employer competitiveness. An organization that is competitive is one that is better or the best compared to the other players. Better or best in terms of what? I can mention three things. One, employees, the best employees. Two, products, the best products in the market. And three, systems, the best systems. So when you talk of competitiveness in terms of employees, an organization can only be competitive if it has employees who are, one, rare to find. That an organization has these rare employees. So when you have these rare employees that competitors cannot have, then you are said to have a competitive advantage. Two, employees who cannot be imitated, meaning that they have skills and knowledge that other players don't have. So through HR audit, we are able to identify this rare and unimitable breed of employees. Those who are innovative, have state-of-the-art skills and knowledge that other competitors don't have. That when we compare ourselves with others in the market, which we call benchmarking, we are able to see whether our employees are superior in terms of skills and knowledge, or they are innovative comparatively. So that is the other magic that HR audit performs. Three, it supports evidence-based decisions where we are collecting facts through HR audits. The other magic is that it drives cultural transition. A good culture is one that adapts to the environment. A rigid culture does not. So we want to create a culture that is adaptable to change. And today we are talking about people and culture professionals. So if you are a people and culture professional, you should be able to influence the change of culture in your organization. So a culture that is supportive is one that adopts new values which promotes organizational success. Values like innovation, transparency and accountability, honesty and integrity, as well as professionalism. So through a HR audit, we are able to identify cultural gaps which we can improve so that we become competitive. The other magic is that it enables risk management. A risk is anything that can cause damage or harm to the organization. It can be within or outside the organization. There are various risks, like I have mentioned: compliance risks, operational risks, strategic risks, or even financial risks. So through an audit, we are able to identify those risks associated with human resource management, especially compliance risks. So by conducting a HR audit, we identify areas in which we are not compliant and take corrective actions. The other one is it improves our reaction to change. Change is all around us, and we should be able to embrace change, because we have said that an effective organization is one that is agile. And our response to change should be seamless and timely. The other one is that it supports leadership development, where we are preparing junior employees for senior positions through succession planning, through training and development, through coaching and mentorship. So if there are such developmental issues, the HR audit should be able to pick them out and make recommendations on the way forward. And lastly, it promotes sustainability of almost everything in HR. One, sustainable recruitment and selection, training, performance management, as well as compensation and rewards. So this is what a HR audit should do if we have to implement it. Next is the key concepts related to HR audit. As you may remember, I said the scope of this training this morning includes the key concepts that all of us should be able to understand, so that it makes it easier for us to conduct this audit. Starting with the audit itself, is a review or evaluation of our HR policies, processes, and systems in terms of compliance, accuracy, and efficiency. The second one is auditor, that at the end of this process, we will become certified HR auditors. And an auditor is therefore a professional who is good at evaluating or assessing the various aspects related to HR. And what do we examine? Records, internal, external, or governmental roles. So that at the end of this process, we are able to conduct a HR audit from beginning to end, from the planning stage, implementation, to monitoring. That is when you will be said to be a HR auditor. It's a professional. Then audit evidence, that you can never conduct a HR audit without having evidence. Evidence could be documents that we keep to show that we are doing the right things in the right way at the right time. So what are some of these documents that we need? I can mention two. One is policies. Two is SOPs, that is standard operating procedures. And three, manuals. So these documents help us to ensure compliance and accuracy of our policies, processes, and systems. Without this evidence, then there is a gap. This gap affects consistency in decision-making, consistency. A document like policy helps us to make consistent decisions. In the absence of policies in HR, then we will be making different decisions for different people at different times, and that becomes inconsistent. The other concept is audit trail, that we are able to track those records from the time they were captured, recorded, and shared. Why? Because we want to ensure transparency and accountability. Anything that cannot be tracked becomes difficult to prove, because we get lost when we cannot provide evidence, like we have said. Then audit criteria are the standards or the metrics we are going to use to measure the effectiveness of our policies, our processes, our practices. So benchmarks and standards are criteria that we use to measure the success of our activities as HR managers. So when we do an audit, we use benchmarks or standards. And that is why we have standard operating procedures as a criteria to measure accuracy and consistency of our processes. So the other one is HR metrics. These are quantitative indicators that we use to measure the effectiveness of HR. As I will be demonstrating, one of the metrics is time to hire. How long does it take for an employee or an employer to hire people? If it takes a very long time, especially in this era of technology, then as an organization, you are doing poorly. The same goes to training and development. What is the return on investment? That at the end of a training program, there should be returns. Some of the returns could be cost reduction, increased revenue, increased profits, or staff retention. And that is what the organization should enjoy. So there are certain measurements that we use in various activities like recruitment, how much time, in training, what is the return, in employee attendance, what's the absenteeism rate, that employees are expected to attend their jobs at all times unless there are valid reasons why they should not be at work. And the valid reasons could be ailments or sickness or accidents. I want us to look at the HR audit process, albeit briefly. One is the planning stage, where you define the scope. If I may take us back to the areas of HR audit, that becomes the scope of your audit. We said areas like functional audit, compliance audit, strategic audit. So this becomes the scope of our audit. But suppose you want to confine yourself to one type of audit, for example, functional audit. So the scope of your audit should be all the functions of a HR manager, starting with human resource plan, recruitment and selection, training and development, performance, health and safety, up to record keeping. And you will be identifying strengths, weaknesses, and gaps in all those areas in relation to the practices, processes, and policies. Still on planning, you determine your objectives. What's the objective of the HR audit? You can say 3 objectives. 1, to identify strengths and weaknesses of the HR function. 2, to identify gaps. And 3, to make recommendations on areas of improvement. So that becomes part of the planning, because objectives give us the direction on what we want to achieve at the end of this process. The other one is the methodology. These are the tools we are going to use to collect, analyze, and interpret data. If it is data collection, we can use methods like interviews, in which case we shall have an interview checklist. Another method is questionnaire, where we design a questionnaire based on the scope. And the other one is observation. For example, we want to observe whether an organization is compliant with health and safety. So we observe whether there are signages within or outside the organization to ensure that people are safe, or existence of ramps for those who are physically challenged. Without these ramps, it becomes difficult for the disabled people to access the organization, especially those on wheelchairs. So that requires an observation checklist. So planning is important because it gives us the basis of conducting the HR audit process. Secondly is data collection, where we need to gather all the information and data that we required in order to audit the policies, processes, and practices. So what are we going to do is to put together all the policies related to human resource. 2, ensure all the records related to employees are available. And lastly, the core documents that we use, like manuals or SOPs, which provide data on the efficiency and effectiveness of our activities. Then once data has been collected, we analyze it. Analysis may involve several things. One is we identify the current practices related to recruitment, training, performance management, and others. 2, compare them with other practices, either within or outside, so that we identify gaps, and also interpret this data to determine their implications. For example, we are talking about diversity and inclusivity. And when you conduct this audit, you find that in certain departments, there are only men or women. Then the question you will ask yourself, where is the balance? We should ensure gender balance as part of our diversity, equity, and inclusivity practice. So analysis is important. So what are the implications of having an imbalanced organization or department in terms of gender? It may bring in legal issues, especially those in public enterprises, where the two-third gender rule applies, that somebody can go to court and say that you are not compliant with this gender rule. Then once you have done the analysis, you prepare a report. So this report will contain the TOR, terms of reference, the methods used, the findings, the gaps, and risks. So they should be identified when you are reporting. What are the key findings in relation to all the functions of a HR manager? Like recruitment, what are your findings? Training, what are your findings? Performance management, what are the findings? And then after those findings, you have gaps. What are the gaps in training? If there was no training and development assessment, you identify that. Then what are the risks? Risks related to compliance, risks related to operations, and risks related to strategy. And lastly, you prepare an action plan in the form of recommendations to address those gaps, weaknesses, as well as risks. So that is the basic process of HR audit. Towards the end of this program, on Friday, we shall be talking about actual simulation of HR audit, where we shall be discussing this in detail. And then the last aspect is follow-up. You should be able to monitor the efficiency and effectiveness of the recommendations. Are we implementing them in the right way, at the right time, and at the right places? And what are the challenges or emerging issues? So that we ensure that this HR audit is a continuous process where we continuously identify where there are gaps and emerging issues. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the basic process of conducting a HR audit. It looks more of a research process, but looks at specifically the HR function, particularly recruitment and selection, training, performance management, and others. And those are the areas that we gather data on, analyze, report, and make follow-ups. I want us to ask any questions that we may have or make any comments before we close for this morning, so that we ensure that we have captured the key aspects that we set out to achieve this morning. So I will invite us to ask any questions or comments. I can go back to where we started, and that is the foundations of human resource audit, where we talked about one, the concept of HR audit, two, the areas of HR audit, three, the role of HR auditors, four, the process of HR auditing. So we are free to ask our questions or our comments so that we bring this to a close.
Hi.
Yes, Felix, go on.
Good morning, Mr. Andrew. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
It is very informative. I think there's something I missed. Maybe if you can highlight it again.
Yes.
Under the audit documents, there are policies, SOPs, and there's some, I think the third, I forgot.
The third one is manuals.
Manual. Thank you so much.
Yes. manuals related to training, related to recruitment, and others.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Anybody else with a question or a comment to make? And in no particular order, Dr. Mary Wandia. Okay.
Mine is to just appreciate you. The training has been very informative.
Yes.
And rest assured, we've been able to take quite a lot.
Thank you, Daktari. I'm happy that the training is informative and that there are a few takeaways that you can use as we move forward. Elisha, if you have a question or comment to make. If you are hearing me, Elisha. Emmanuel. Looks like Emmanuel is not there or doesn't have a question or comment. Fanny. Okay. If there is no question, maybe I can ask my own question and anybody can answer this. What are the key takeaways that you have learned this morning that you can identify with and also implement in your organization? Any key takeaways, maybe 3? Anybody with a takeaway?
Can I be the first one to go?
Yes, Dr. Ari, go on.
I feel from your training, the HR is a very crucial department.
Yes.
And the strength of HR will dictate the direction that the company will take.
Yes.
So if we have a strong foundation in the HR department, then definitely that organization will have a competitive edge.
Yes.
Because it looks like all the root and the foundation is founded in the HR department.
Yes.
Because when we have strong policies, then ultimately we will have staff who are motivated and eventually the productivity will be enhanced and everyone will be happy because once we have an increase in return on investment, it means that it will have a direct transition in a motivated staff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yes, that HR is the foundation of the success of any organization. And that is why it is argued that employees are the most important asset. An asset is anything that we can use to achieve our goals, objectives, or strategies. And speaking of HR as an asset, we are able to use our human resources to achieve our goals and objectives as an organization. So what are these aspects that make human resource as a very important asset? 1 is the skills, 2, the knowledge, 3, the experience, and 4, the abilities. The way we utilize these skills, knowledge, and experiences will determine our success. And that is where the return on investment comes in. That if we invest in our employees in terms of three things. One, training. Two, compensation and rewards. And three, a conducive work environment, we are likely to reap dividends. So what are the dividends that we are likely to get from our investments? One, as Daktari mentioned, we are going to be competitive because we have the right skills, knowledge, and experience among our employees. Two, we are likely to increase our revenues, whether it is private or public. There are some who are revenue oriented, so we increase our revenues. Four, we are likely to make our customers satisfied, whether internal or external. And for those who are profit oriented, our employees can generate profits if they have the right skills, the right knowledge, experience, and abilities. So when we audit the HR function, we are looking at efficiency and the effectiveness of our policies, our practices, and our systems. So that at the end of it all, we are able to obtain the return on our investment. So thank you, Mary, for the takeaway. Anybody else who has a takeaway so that we close the program for now?
Maybe I can comment.
Yes.
My takeaway is on risk and audit.
Yes.
I just learned that when we do such audits, help us to identify and also to prevent such risk from happening. This can be in many ways, which can also prevent the growth and the progress of the organization, and also in terms of the organization achieving its vision. So being able to mitigate such risks helps to the positive progress of the organization, as well as staff growth as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, there are many risks that revolve around human resource management. And when we effectively manage those risks, we are able to achieve our objectives as a department and as an organization. Those mitigation measures, which form part of the recommendations of HR audit, and identify those gaps and the weaknesses so that we don't lose out on revenue generation and also growth of the organization. So that's very important. And again, we shall talk about risks later so that we can clearly see how HR audits help us to identify, analyze, and mitigate those risks which could have a negative impact on our organizations. So thank you very much, Jonathan. Anybody else with a takeaway so that we can close there? Okay. If there is no question or a comment, I will want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for being with us this morning. I believe it has been a valuable session to all of us. I look forward to seeing you again later in the afternoon so that we can get more insights. Yes, Esther?
I have a question.
Yes.
It might be outside this discussion. What might be some of the risks in the HR?
Mhm.
Yes, risk in the risk register.
Risk register. So what's your question on that?
Okay, what are some of the risks in the HR? Like for example,
Uh-huh.
an employee. Okay, you do an advert,
Mhm.
then a candidate come for an interview,
Mhm.
but now reject the job offer. Can
Mhm.
that be one of the risks for the organization?
Thank you, Esther.
Yes.
Yes, employees reject jobs for various reasons, probably because of the working environment after onboarding, or two, it could be related to our reward and the compensation system, or it could be opportunities for growth. When an employee rejects a job, it means that there are things that we may not be doing well, which could be risky because we are not going to attract better employees in future. For example, if the employee rejected the job because of payment, then our future or potential candidates are also likely to reject this kind of payment. It becomes a risk if we cannot attract people based on our practices, policies, and systems related to recruitment. Or it can be a risk in terms of reputation, that is an organization where employees don't stay for long. So there are these two risks. One, attracting the right candidates in future. And two, our reputation is at stake because employees join and leave. And therefore, yes, a person rejecting a job could be risky because of the practices that we have. And probably before they leave, you could be able to find out why they rejected the job. It's always good to have this data so that when you conduct a recruitment and selection, next time you are able to take care of the reasons why these employees rejected the offer. So I guess I've answered your question. And yes, there are other questions related to risks. One of the other risks, as we have said, is compliance risks. That an employee may reject a job because of non-compliance with certain aspects associated with the jobs they were to do. For example, health and safety, if there were no protective equipment, they may reject the offer. So offer can be rejected at two stages. One, when they are being onboarded, the information they get about the organization can lead to somebody rejecting an offer. Or two, some join just because they wanted a job, and soon after they resign, saying that the environment is not conducive, the payment is not what they expected, among other things. So that becomes a risk because we are losing staff as soon as they join. There could be something fundamentally wrong with our organization leading to the rejection. So those are the wrongs that we want to correct by way of conducting HR audits. As you will see in our next session, that when you are conducting functional audits, for example, recruitment and selection, one of the benchmarks is the rate of acceptance of job offers So how many people accepted the job offer compared to the number that we had selected? So if the numbers are high, it means that there is something wrong with our system or a process, and which we must take corrective actions. So thank you very much, Esther. I guess I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So if there is no further question or comment,
Doc, I have my hand raised.
sorry,
Adam Siad
Adam.
is my name. Yes. So
Adam, yes.
I have one remark and I have also a question on the
Yes,
risk.
go on.
So one of the remark is sometimes when interviews are done, you find out that we normally ask the candidate what is their salary, the tech, and any other stuff. And also we have to evaluate to see the budget of the company or the firm or the organization. You
Yes.
realize that the best candidate is always the one asking for the highest salary. And so we go back now to see the second candidate. Once this gentleman already declined the offer,
Yes.
is it a risk to go back to the rest of the? Of course, the first one and second one candidate might have performed well, and the second one is normally within our budget. So will that, by selecting a second one with the committee, of course, will it create a risk? And then my question also is where there are no what do you call duty of care principle in an organization or firm, does that becomes a risk compliance for the organization? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. I will start with your first question, that when we select the final candidate, again, this is guided by policy. That usually when we fill vacant positions, we select 3 names and present them to the appointing authorities. These 3 names could be in order of merit or ranking. The first one is the one that is usually given an offer. If the first one declines, you go to the second, and even if the third declines, you go to the third. Beyond the third one, it could be a risk. A risk because there are certain criteria that you are using to find suitability for the job. For example, experience. Probably the fourth person didn't have the experience. The risk is that this person is not going to perform the job for which he or she is being considered. Or 2, they may not have the right skills, including leadership skills, interpersonal skills, communication. So the best 3 are always the first ones to be considered. Beyond 3, you can't go to the fourth one because they may be lacking in certain fundamental skills, experience, and knowledge. So that could be a risk if you go to the fourth one. The other one is on your policy related to selection. What does your policy say on the first, second, and third candidates who are selected for job offers? So if the policy says that you re-advertise, if the third candidate declines, then you re-advertise so that you can get the best candidate the next time. On your second question, you talked about duty of care. Yes, as HR managers, we have a duty of care that we should care for our employees in terms of 2 or 3 things. One, health and safety. That as our managers, we owe it to ourselves and to our employees that the environment in which they operate is healthy and safe. So one of the things that we should do to avoid those risks is to provide PPEs, depending on the job that people are doing. Two, ensure that the environment is clean and safe. Three, training people so that they are aware of the health and safety issues. And four, and that's why we come in as HR auditors, we must audit health and safety conditions in our organizations. So we have a duty of care to our employees. We also have a duty of care to our managers or superiors. That if we care about the performance of the HR department, then we should ensure that it performs to expectations and helps to achieve the objectives and goals of the organization. So by conducting a HR audit, we want to ensure that the HR function performs to expectations. It will be a disservice to our organizations if we don't care about the performance of the HR function. So for that reason, we have a duty of care to ensure that the HR function achieves the objectives of an organization by way of alignment. And lastly, we have a duty of care to ensure that other departments are staffed with the right people, with the right skills, knowledge, and experiences. And that is why we always include a representative from other departments during recruitment and selection, so that we don't hire people who may not fit into other departments. So the duty of care cuts across all the functions of our HR department, as well as to the overall performance of the organization. But most importantly, the duty of care to ensure a healthy and a safe work environment. So I guess Adan have answered your question. Unless you
Yes,
have
you
another,
did, Bonanto. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Mr. Andrew, if I can add something on the first question.
Yes, Felix?
Yeah, on the question relating to interview, I think there are ways we can handle it so that we avoid the issue of candidate or a dilemma of our best candidate asking for way beyond what our salary range is. And
Yes.
one, I want to agree with you that a well-conducted interview will give you
Yes.
3 to 4 best candidates, which you will be comfortable employing any of those ones, any of the first 3 or 4. And so when it comes to the issue of salary, I think good practices requires that when we are doing job advert, we need to include the salary range.
Yes.
Though most organizations still shy away from it, but where you have not included it in the job advert, it is recommended that you do a pre-shortlist interview so that the candidates you are inviting for interview, you are able to discuss with them the what your budget is, and you only invite them for interview if they are okay with that salary range, so that you don't waste their time, they don't waste your time, and through that process, I think the issue of salary can be sorted in advance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Felix. Yes, it's true that when you are open with your potential employees during interviews, it becomes easier for you to make a determination on who to hire based on your budget. That it should be clear that that is your budget and that is how much you can afford to give the employees. If I may throw a spanner into the works, you may have these people who may accept your offer in the hope that when they join, they will get better pay or rewards once they join. And from my experience, this is common among the younger generation, particularly Gen Zs. They may want to get into the organization. That's their main interest. Then shortly after that, they become dissatisfied and they leave the organization. But yes, Felix, you are right. We should be able to select employees based on our budget so that we don't waste time hiring people who will not stay for long. Thank you very much. So if there is no question, I want us to stop there for now. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for sharing. And I look forward to seeing you again later in the afternoon. May God bless you. Asante sana.